The Venezuelan economic collapse was a real-life SHTF scenario. Venezuela, once one of the wealthiest nations in South America, faced a catastrophic economic collapse. This plunged the country into severe poverty, starvation, and violence. Let's go over what happened and the extreme measures that people took to survive. First off, what were the causes of the collapse? The first was mismanagement of oil revenues. Venezuela's economy relied heavily on oil exports, which was 95% of its revenue. The government failed to diversify the economy, and they also mismanaged the oil revenues. This led to a significant economic downturn when oil prices plummeted in 2014. The next reason is hyperinflation. Excessive printing of money to cover fiscal deficits led to hyperinflation. Prices were basically doubling every few days. By 2018, the inflation rate reached 1,000,000%, basically rendering the country's currency worthless. The next reason is political corruption. Widespread corruption and poor governance exacerbated the economic crisis. Funds were siphoned off by officials, leaving little for public services and infrastructure. Sanctions were another reason. International sanctions, specifically from the United States, strained the already collapsing economy even more. This restricted access to foreign capital and goods. Now let's go over the dire conditions faced by the population. Over 90% of the population fell below the poverty line. Middle-class families started selling their belongings to afford basic needs. The country's currency became worthless. People needed basically wheelbarrows full of cash just to get groceries. Supermarket shelves were often empty. The government's price controls and currency devaluation led to shortages of basic goods. People queued for hours, sometimes days, hoping to buy essential items. Just to buy simple items like bread, milk, and rice, but they often left empty-handed. Venezuela's water infrastructure collapsed, leading to frequent and long water outages. The areas that did have access to water only had it a few days a week. Even when water was available, it was often contaminated. In some cases, people drank from polluted rivers and streams, risking waterborne diseases. And as you can probably expect, there was a lot of crime and violence. With the police overwhelmed and underfunded, there was high cases of robbery, kidnapping, and homicide. Caracas, the capital, became one of the most dangerous cities in the world. Hospitals lacked basic supplies like antibiotics, gauze, and IV fluids. A massive amount of healthcare workers left the country looking for better opportunities abroad. Diseases that were once under control saw a huge increase. Some examples are malaria, tuberculosis, and diphtheria. Lack of medicine and proper sanitation contributed to the spread of these diseases. Severe malnutrition affected millions, especially children and the elderly. Poor nutrition, lack of clean water, and inadequate healthcare led to a significant increase in mortality rates. The economic collapse led to a breakdown in services like garbage pickup. Trash piled on the streets and diseases spread. People resorted to burning their waste or dumping it in parking lots, rivers, and other open spaces. There were pests and rats everywhere. All that garbage led to increased cases of lung problems and skin infections. Frequent and long power outages became part of daily life. A bunch of businesses closed, communication systems failed, and food spoiled. The public transportation system also deteriorated. Fuel shortages led to long lines at gas stations. Some people waited for days just to get nothing. Now let's look at the extreme measures people took for survival. Many Venezuelans scoured garbage bins outside restaurants and grocery stores looking for food. A bunch of children were seen digging through heaps of trash. They ate leftovers and even spoiled fruits. People started hunting dogs, cats, and pigeons. Parks and green spaces became foraging spots for edible plants. Insects like crickets, ants, and beetles became an essential food source. Rats and mice were trapped, skinned, and cooked. People broke into zoos and started eating the animals there as well. People used tarps and gutters to direct rainwater into large containers. Water used for washing clothes, dishes, and bathing was repurposed for flushing toilets and irrigating gardens. With the currency devalued, barter became the main method of transaction. People traded food, clothing, household items, and tools. One example is a bag of rice could be traded for a few bars of soap. A spare part for a bicycle might be traded for a dozen eggs. Skills and services became valuable commodities. A mechanic might repair a neighbor's vehicle in exchange for fresh vegetables. A seamstress could mend clothes in return for canned goods. Informal barter markets were created where people could exchange goods and services. There really wasn't a standard currency, so there was a lot of negotiation and haggling and stuff like that going on. To protect against looters and burglars, families reinforced their home. Windows were barred with metal grates or wooden planks. Doors were reinforced with additional locks and braces. Neighborhoods formed watch groups and took turns patrolling the area. Weapons like machetes, bats, and homemade stun devices were kept at the ready. The people who already had licenses were using Glocks, the Beretta 92 FS, and Smith & Wesson revolvers. For those that didn't have weapons, legally getting a weapon became very difficult, so people turned to black markets. The prices were extremely high, so only people with a lot of money could afford them. A Glock 19 was selling for up to 5,000 USD. Alright guys, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. That's the best way to support this channel.